Sovereignty. Man, what a powerful word. The essential launch point to access infinite potential. The essential launch point to access infinite potential. What a big statement. Have I got your interest? I certainly hope so, because this is a very big subject I want to cover with you today. Quantum conscious leaders are sovereign. You literally cannot be a quantum conscious leader, or you can't be a leader of any kind unless you're sovereign. In the old 3D world, everybody was faking that they were sovereign, but they weren't. They were all slaves. All the leaders are slaves. They've all literally are not experiencing that freedom of sovereignty, or what sovereignty actually really is. And the thing is, I don't think a lot of people have delved into what the meaning of this word, this incredible word, which, by the way, is our divine birthright. It's our divine birthright to be sovereign. And so, whose responsibility is to make that happen? Each and every one of us. Each and every one of us. It's our responsibility to be in a state of sovereignty, to be the consciousness of sovereignty. And so, what does that exactly mean? Well, we're going to talk about it and talk about why it's the launch point to access infinite potential, to enjoy infinite possibilities as your material reality, as your everyday experiences, as your everyday experiences. Wow. And so what that means is you become a magical manifester. Everything you passionately intend becomes your reality, and it happens very quickly. Because isn't the world speeding up now? I mean, man, look at the Schumann index right now. It's just we are being blasted by beautiful light energy, solar flares. It's all happening. Everything is speeding up. And so that means that, whatever you consciously and passionately intend and are feeling and are being will be manifested more rapidly into your reality. And so that's alchemy, isn't it? And being sovereign is being an alchemist. They're the same thing. And so let's start with sovereignty and what it means. Let's talk about the journey we're going to go on today. Sovereignty at a first glance. Let's just have a look at it. And so this is me, Glenn, doing a little bit of research. Let's go and see what everybody's saying about this. And then let's look at this guy's point of view, Bowden's point of perspective, and I'll talk to you about why I chose Bowden and who he is. And we'll examine his perspective. And then we're going to talk about, if you're free, if you're sovereign, you're free to do what? Because Bowden's perspective is excellent, but it's limited. I mean, he just doesn't cover one little point, which I noticed straight away. When I read all about it, I thought, well, hold on a minute, what about? And so we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the Quantum Conscious Leadership Institute perspective of what sovereignty is. So, do you think I've given this word a lot of thought? I have. I'm going to share my thoughts with you today. And then there's 5 sovereignty hacks. And so, how do I get to sovereignty? Well, let's not make it hard. Let's take some shortcuts. Let's get there. And that's what a hack really is. It's I used to spend a lot of time in my old days talking about biological hacking. And what was I talking about? Epigenetics. It's just a different word for epigenetics. Biological hacking would mean something like, oh, well, I found a way not to get the flu this season, like everybody else. So I've got a biological hack that will ensure that that doesn't happen. But really, what I was talking about was just using my mind to ensure that I stayed well. That was it. Epigenetics. And Bruce Lipton talks about that pretty much better than anybody. And so we've got some sovereignty hacks, some ways of getting there very quickly, which are really, really, really important. So please pay real attention to that stuff. It's very important. Make some notes if you have to. And so sovereignty at first glance, well, I went into Wiki, generally defined as supreme independent control, lawmaking authority, hold on a minute. So, wiki, generally defined as supreme. That word doesn't really resonate, does it? Independent control and lawmaking authority over territory. And so, at first glance, I'm not really liking the wiki definition of sovereignty because they're talking about a nation, they're talking about a body for a start, an independent body as being supreme, which means I control you. You know, I'm independently controlling all my subjects. It kind of feels like that, doesn't it? Lawmaking authority over a territory. So there's one definition of sovereignty for you. Doesn't resonate with me. Then I went to word hippo and I started looking. Word hippo is just a thesaurus. And then I went to word hippo and I started looking for, similar words. And so it threw up this independence, freedom, autonomy, liberty, self-determination, non-alignment, feeling that's resonating with me. I'm feeling like, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, it's me of myself, my body, my mind, my vibration, my actions, as opposed to wanting to be, controlling others. It's control of self, isn't it? It's independence of self, freedom of self, of action, of thought, of words. It's autonomy, liberty. I love that word. Self determination, self reliance, self sustainability, all of those things. Non alignment, which means I don't have to be a part of your crowd or any crowd. I can be independent. And so then we look at the definition of personal sovereignty. I really love this, and one word stood out to me straight away. The concept, it's not a reality, it's a concept of self ownership, individual self governance, and supreme authority over one's body, mind, and life. I mean, once you get past the word concept, it all rings true, doesn't it? But they're actually saying it's a concept, it's not real. You can't have it. Oh, it's so funny. I look at these things and I do really look at the words and what they're trying to say. And I picked that word out straight away. It's a concept. You can't have it. It's not a reality. Well, why didn't they say the reality of self ownership, the being of self ownership, the experience of self ownership? No, they said the concept. And so that again was a definition that I found online somewhere. And again, it's not, in essence, most of it feels, and I'm not saying it's true, I'm just saying it resonates. In essence, most of it resonates, but the word concept doesn't resonate. It's a red flag because they're trying to derail me from saying, well, I can have that. No, it's just it's not, it's out there. You can't have it. And so we've still got this stuff on the internet that is misleading. And so when I look at, you know, what sovereignty means, I have a tendency to resonate with word hippo in terms of, and they don't always give every word that resonates. There's some words that don't. And so let's look at it from a philosophical point of view. Individual liberty and natural rights, where a person is not the property of the state or any group. Now that rings true, doesn't it? And let's move on from it being philosophical to it being true. Would all you like to experience individual liberty and natural rights, natural law, common law, universal law, where a person is not the property of the state or any group? Yeah. I mean, I don't belong to, I've been this way for a long time. So yes, I was born and bred in Australia. But do I kneel in front of the flag? Nope, not my flag. I belong to this planet. I'm not an Australian. I am from this planet. And I kind of feel as though we're moving toward that, where we're going to say, no, I'm an earthling. Where are you from? Earth. And so, rather than saying, well, I pay my homage to the flag, because that's the group that I belong to. I am the property of that flag. No, I'm not. I don't belong to any of these groups at all. And so that doesn't mean that you're alienating yourself from everything. It just means that you're not the property of it, which means you don't have to adhere to their rules and their laws. It's like when you belong to a group, if you belong to a motorcycle gang, here's the rules that you must adhere to. Or if you belong to some specific group, you'll find that they have rules and regulations that they make you adhere to. And then they think you're their property. This is what happens in organizations in the 3D world. These are our values. This is what we do. You will now genuflect, get down on your knee, give me your knee. No, I just can't see organizations operating like that in the future. And so the psychological definition, the freedom and power to set your own identity, path, goals, and values. Wow, that's resonating. The physical, total jurisdiction and control over your physical body and healthcare choices. So go back to 2020. Do you think that was the case? Where we had total jurisdiction and control over our physical body and healthcare choices? No, we didn't. What were those things called? Mandates. They weren't laws. We are mandating that you do this. This is our mandate for your good. No, it wasn't for our good. And a mandate is not a law. And a mandate is taking away my freedom of my choice with my physical body and my healthcare choices. And so we haven't had that in the past, have we? Probably at any juncture. But we're starting to understand now that we do. And so that rings true to me as well. Responsibility, to accept full responsibility for your own choices, reactions, and behavior rather than blaming external forces. That means sovereignty is my responsibility. It's my responsibility to understand what it means to me. Now, I've given you a lot of definitions and a lot of stuff there to consider what resonates with you. And all that's important is not what I'm trying to tell you it is, but what resonates with you. And that's why I've used that word a couple of times. Certain things resonate to me and other things don't. And so what resonates, I will use to my benefit, and what doesn't, I'll just wave away. And so accepting full responsibility, I completely agree with. I mean, my sovereignty is my responsibility. It's not yours, it's nobody else's. I'm not sitting around waiting for it to be given to me by somebody, because if I'm doing that, I'm not sovereign. And so I'm under somebody else's control. And so it's my right, it's my birthright to be sovereign. And it's my choice and my responsibility to pursue what that means to me, and then to enact it, embody it in thought, in word, in vibrational energy, my emotions, my feelings, and my actions, to be sovereign. And so let's go to Bodin. This guy, Jean Bodin, lived from 1530 to 1596. He was a French friar, an academic, a professor of law, political advisor, philosopher. He was a pretty influential guy in his time. And so he gave a perspective of this, and his notion of personal sovereignty is the power the sovereign holds must be absolute, undivided, and permanent over self, but not others. I love this definition. The power of the sovereign holds must be absolute, undivided, permanent, and permanent over self and not others. Let's have a look at what that means. What does absolute mean? Sovereignty, free will, or choice? We all have free will. We all have the ability to choose what is right for us in our lives based on what our personal vision is, or our core purpose, if we know what that is, if we have clarity around that. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. So sovereignty is not limited by place, status, creed, or competence. And it doesn't depend on the consent of other people or entities, even God. He draws that distinction. I mean, he was a friar, right? And he's saying, I can't be personally sovereign if God is dictating to me what my life path is and what I should do. Or I'm under this feeling, this assumption that God has a plan for me, and I've got to somehow mystically find out what that plan is and then adhere to it. Well, that's not sovereignty, is it? I mean, because it really means that, I've got to somehow find out what God's plan is for me. I mean, you hear this a lot, don't you? God has a plan for me. What is it? I've got to spend my life finding out what God's plan is for me. Um, and I personally, this is my personal opinion. I'd really appreciate it if you didn't attack me on it. But my personal opinion is God gave me free will. God gave me the ability to choose. Now, do I have my own specific divine calling? Yes, I do. But I believe I chose what that was as my true higher self, my God self, my divine spark, what that was before I came into this three-dimensional reality. I chose what it was. And I've related to you many in previous meetings that, I recall having this conversation with Source, with God, if you want to call it that, or whatever name you want to call that being. And I said, this is why I'm going back. I've thought about it. This is why I'm going back. And Sources looked at me and said, sounds good, Glenn. It's like, well, you got any input? No, you've thought about it. This is what you want to do. Go for it. But just remember, as soon as you're born, you're going to forget what that is. So you're going to spend your life trying to remember what it is, or hopefully not your whole life, that your memory will come back to you in a way where you have clarity of it, and then you go about doing it. And so, do I have your blessing? You don't need it, Glenn. I mean, do you have your blessing, Glenn? Yes, I bless myself. Yeah, okay, great. I wish you well on your journey. Now, that's what I think the conversation is. That's what I feel myself personally. And so, undivided, what does Bowden mean by undivided? Sovereignty must be unhindered by any one person, a minority of people, or all of them. And so I can't be sovereign and have other people, one, a few, or many, say to me, no, we don't agree with that. You've got to agree with what we want, even though it may not be in your best interest. And so that's what undivided means. Permanent means perpetual or everlasting. I mean, there's no use by date on this one. You're sovereign forever or not at all. And so it's a little bit black and white, isn't it? I mean, I'm either sovereign or I'm not. And once I understand what sovereignty really is from a personal perspective, from what vibrates with, what really resonates with me, what really feels in my heart, right? That this is what it really actually is to me. And everybody's going to be a little bit different about this, and that's okay. It's no problem. There's no one size fits all, one road must be traveled by all. Not at all. There's many different roads to a similar destination, and we all take our own variation of that road, and we all do it in our own unique, special way. And that's good. That's a really good thing. We're individuals here, even though we're all, energetically connected or entangled. We're individuals, and we have choice. And so you want it to be perpetual. Of course, if I'm going to be sovereign, I can't have it taken away from me tomorrow by some external body who says, now, these are the rules. Well, no, that's not freedom. That's not, I don't have the opportunity to exercise, free will or my choice over my mind, my body, my energy, my actions, my words, my thoughts, So that's what's really important. Absolute, undivided, and permanent. I like your way you're thinking, Mr. Bowden, Mr. Gene Bowden. And so he said, he was quoted as saying this: a sovereign individual is free to put aside civil law, but he must uphold natural, universal, or common law. So what's he done? He's drawn the distinction between admiralty law, hasn't he? I mean, the law of the sea, which we are still have to answer to. Well, that's not common law. I mean, what we know from the judicial system is a corrupt system. It's not fair at all. There's no justice there, and there's very little truth. And so he's drawing a distinction and saying civil law doesn't work, but he must uphold natural law, universal law, common law. Such a great quote. Um, and so freedom to do what? The thing I like about Bowden's analysis is it is very insightful what he examines, but we need what he examines is this whole concept of what we need to be sovereign from. I mean, it's all we need to be sovereign from this, we need to be sovereign from that. He doesn't delve into what we need to be sovereign for. He actually doesn't talk about that. He talks about sovereignty, he talks about having free choice. Well, free choice to do what? And so once we rejoice the achievement of true freedom and self-determination, what are we free to do? And of course, you can see where I'm going with this. I mean, if you've been, if you've tapped into any of my teachings in the past and, you really get what we're here to do as sovereign conscious leaders, what are we free to do? And so clearly, sovereignty without vision or purpose will be meaningless and unfulfilled. So it's sovereign from is step one, sovereign for is step two. And Mr. Bowden doesn't talk about step two, which is a crucial step, which is really about saying, well, I've got to have clarity of my own vision, my own unique vision and purpose, my reason for being here, the reason I decided to come back here, my contribution, my unique contribution to humanity and the evolution, the enhancement of humanity, the evolution of humanity, the transformation of humanity into a collective of individuals that have the freedom to choose how they contribute to themselves, their family, and every life they touch. And so having clarity of who you really are and why you're here, your vision and your purpose is a very important kind of stage two aspect from my perspective. So let's look at the QCLI, the Quantum Conscious Leadership Institute perspective. We must have sovereignty for something profound, which is our unique journey of higher self and intentions realization. And that means having clarity of and freely pursuing our divine vision and purpose, our ultimate reason for being. I mean, once you're sovereign from something, don't you want to be sovereign for something? Isn't that really the game that we want to play here? And so I have personally given this subject so much thought that I have a definition of personal sovereignty. Personal sovereignty is the commitment to exercise absolute, undivided, and permanent freedom from all unwanted limitations for higher self-realization. What does higher self-realization mean? It means to be who I really am as my true higher self, my source self, my God self, my unlimited self, my infinite self. And then to pursue my personal vision, my personal purpose, my personal goals, unhindered by anybody or anything, anywhere. And so I have used those words from Bowden to exercise the commitment and the responsibility to exercise absolute, undivided, and permanent freedom from all unwanted limitations for higher self-realization. And higher self-realization has to be good. You can't be doing something that is going to harm others because you're adhering to universal law, common law, God's law. That's what the process of higher self-realization and, higher intention, passionate intention realization is all about. So let's go to the hacks now. Sovereignty hack number one, be sovereign. And so remember, I was saying earlier, I think it might have been before the recording, but earlier, no, it was during the recording, earlier, that you don't manifest sovereignty. You simply choose to be it. In fact, you don't choose, you just be. Sound a bit like Yoda, don't I? There is no try, there is just do. And so be sovereign and begin with the feeling of sovereignty. And it may not start with freedom because freedom is definitely a feeling, but you want to kind of experience the emotions of sovereignty first, don't we? It will likely begin with relief and gratitude. I mean, relief. I am relieved, man, that I'm here. I don't have to do that anymore. And so, I've kind of shifted out of that and I've shifted into this state of being, this consciousness. And in that transition, in that shift, there is an enormous sense of relief. And what's the relief? Well, I don't have to do that other stuff anymore. I mean, I'm past that stage. And gratitude. Thank God I'm here. This is great. Thank myself, I am grateful for myself because I've actually done the work to get here. Then you may have these feelings of joy and peace and harmony where you actually are sitting there going, being sovereign is the playground for these feelings. It's the playground for the feeling of freedom, the feeling of joy, of peace, the feeling of gratitude, the feeling of complete and total relief. And so, if you're looking to be sovereignty, then the quickest way to do that, the sovereignty hack, is to feel it, is to just feel that state of sovereignty, that consciousness of sovereignty. Now, you may look at your external reality and say, "Well, I'm not experiencing sovereignty." No. The feeling comes first, and the reality comes second. Remember how quantum physics works, right? The observation comes first. And then what happens as a result of that observation comes second. It's the double slit experiment. It's the intention of the observer that actually causes the effect. And so you don't look for the effect first. Don't look for an external source to provide you with sovereignty. The government doesn't give you sovereignty. There's nobody can give you sovereignty. It's you making a decision. I am sovereign. Think about that statement. I am sovereign. I am free. I am peace. I am joy. I am harmony. I am infinite, divine abundance. That's sovereignty. And so you must feel it and be in the consciousness of it, be in that state of being before your external reality starts to reflect it. And it will. It has to. It's the law. And so you've got to let go of any restriction to complete freedom. And all of those restrictions are pretty much personal because the outer, as I just mentioned a moment ago, reflects the inner. And so you've got to have this internally first before your outer reflects everything. I watched this video last night with this guy who was talking about quantum physics, but he's using the metaphor of the mirror. The mirror always reflects you. And so you can't change the image in the mirror. You've got to change you before the image in the mirror changes. Of course, it's a good metaphor, but it's saying something that we know, isn't it? The outer reflects the inner. And so if you want to experience sovereignty, be sovereign. External, yes, there is still that. Now, still this, a lot of people say to me, but there's the system. I'm in the system. Well, you've got to actually make decisions, take actions where you start to detach yourself from the system. You exit where you can. Now, I'm not suggesting anybody put themselves up for harm where the police come in or some authority comes in and says you can't do that, we're jailing you for that. Well, of course you don't expose yourself to that. But you may sit down and write a list and say, these are all the areas where I'm not experiencing sovereignty. Is there something I can do about it? And if there's something you can do about it without exposing yourself to harm or incarceration or any of those things, then go about doing it. Because it's a feeling, of course, but then there may be certain actions you can take where you can say, well, I'm just not doing that anymore. That's part of the system that I can easily detach myself from. So that's what I'm going to do. And so every time you take a little step to do that, and I know some people who have gone completely sovereign, where they've just basically said, I'm not, that person in capital letters anymore. I'm not the straw man. And, I've taken every single opportunity to ensure I am detached from that and that I am free from that and that I'm not governed by that anymore because that's not who I am. That's the corporation that, I was enslaved into and other people profited from. And so I'm not doing that anymore. That's not me. And so, I know one person in particular comes to mind, I won't mention any names, who has gone completely through every aspect of the system and detached from it completely. Of course, except those things that might cause harm to him and his family. But he really understands this subject of the straw man and has detached himself from it, which is quite extraordinary. Sovereignty hack number 2, get clarity. Now, what have I been talking about all the way through? Begin with self-awareness. This question that has plagued humanity for time immemorial, who am I and why am I here, is one of the biggest questions that creates confusion, that creates bewilderment, that creates stress and anxiety and suffering because people don't know how to get to it. Well, of course, everybody here in the Quantum Conscious Leadership Institute knows this is one of the first and foremost things we do. How could you be a leader and not know who you are and why you're actually here, what your special contribution is, and how you can go about pursuing that? And so it begins with self-awareness. Self-awareness is the cornerstone. And to be self-aware, you've literally got to take the time to be still and notice, to notice actually who you really are, and to begin to remember who you are. And so you're not creating who you are. You're not, devising it. It's already there. And so it's really just a matter of the remembering. And to do that, in many respects, you've got to get out of your busy, crazy, monkey beta mind and move into alpha, even theta, and be still. Because this does come to you, it will come to you, it has to come to you. And so once you get clarity of your unique and divine vision and purpose, your true higher self, everything changes. It is a significant and massive step to being sovereign because then you understand your freedom, your rights, and you understand why you're here and what you're here to do. And you understand, you start to notice all those things that are impeding you, that are limiting you, whether they be internal or external, from doing that. And you align with your true I am consciousness. That's what being sovereign is all about. Energy hack number 3, dismiss doubt. Now, one of the biggest interlopers that we've got to deal with is doubt. Doubt constantly creeps in. It's the old programming, but it is natural. And we don't want to actually fight doubt. We want to dismiss it. There's a big difference, a very subtle but significant difference between the two. We don't want to fight doubt because when you fight doubt, you're giving doubt energy. You're assuming by giving it your attention and your energy, you're assuming it's something significant. You don't want to do that. You actually want to catch it and dismiss it and just say, no, that's not who I am. I don't do that anymore. And then immediately realign back to the clarity of who you really are and why you're here. And it does require vigilance. I've heard, Neville Goddard talk about this. And he has said, you may have doubt crop up 10, 20, 50, hundreds of times a day. Well, vigilance is required. You've got to notice it and say, no, that's not who I am anymore. And like anything, it's like, when you're in the gym training a muscle all the time, or, your muscles all the time, you initially don't see anything for a week or 2 or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. And then all of a sudden you start to notice change. You just say, well, hold on a minute. Wow, look at that. And that's because there's been vigilance and persistence. You just can't give up. You can't give up. And you don't need to seek proof that what I'm doing is manifesting. You've got to live in the feeling of having it already. I've already talked about that because the outer reflects the inner eventually. And so no current evidence of intention realized is old data. It's actually what I'm experiencing, my material reality now is past intentions when I wasn't clear about who I am and why I'm really here or what I really want or what I want to contribute. And so it's old data. It's a reflection of the old programmed you. And so what you've got to do is just be persistent and say, no, I'm not accepting doubt. I'm not accept, the physical reality that I'm experiencing is just the old me, and the universe is catching up. And so, and when that happens and how that happens, nobody really knows because the universe works in very unexpected, mystical ways. And so you've got to be open to it. You've got to be open to anything. Anything can happen. Miracles can happen all the time. And usually miracles are created by you. You're the creator of the miracle. You're the magician. You're the alchemist. When you know how to use those powers, and those powers are available to all of us, to everyone. We just have to take the time to go about realizing it and then going on the path of, that program in the gym where you go, it's a series of steps that I have to go through. And when I'm persistent and when I go on that journey and I get the right, coaching, training, guidance, and support, then I will do my best work and get the best results. And so doubt is one of the massive interlopers that'll just come up all the time, like around these events we're waiting for. There's a lot of people now going, is it real? Is it another psyop? Well, that's doubt. What they should be doing is dismissing that and not entertaining it, because when they entertain it and they give it their energy, that's what the reality of the world they're going to live in. They're going to be split out and they will not experience what we know is inevitable for us as we move forward, both personally and externally. So it does require 100% commitment to higher self, our higher self version, and our specific intention realization. And that means that we've got to have clarity of that first. That's why that was energy hack number 2. Beyond being the feeling of it is to get clarity. You simply must have clarity of true higher self and reason for being, your passionate intentions, and then commit to that. Commit to the beingness of that. And when you do that, everything will change. And when doubt comes, dismiss it. It is not relevant. It's not important anymore. That's the old program trying to come in and bring you back down. And you just can't let it happen. Energy hack number 4 is mastering energy. Haven't we already been alluding to this? What you are feeling is and will be what you experience. Now, of course, that's got to be aligned with the clarity of your intention, hasn't it? You have the clarity of what it is, the end point, the end state, and then you just go about feeling the end state. And so you're already living in the end state. I'm already there. And when you're already there, you're not in the process of manifesting it. You're not hoping it will come. You're not expecting it to come. It's already there. I already have it. That's what you will experience. It is the law. So feeling the intention realized is crucial. It's consciousness alignment. That's why I talk about this state of consciousness, being the state of consciousness of having, of already received. It is done. And so what's the emotion? The emotion is the reaction. This is the difference between emotions and feelings. The emotion is the reaction. The feeling is our mind's interpretation of what that reaction is. Here's an example. The emotion might be relief. The feeling is freedom. I'm relieved that I'm now in this state of being. But the feeling is freedom. And the beingness is sovereignty. It's subtle distinctions, but it's very important to understand this stuff. Sovereignty hack number 5, go within. Be still and connect with inner guidance, your intuition. One of the most incredible resources we have is within us. And the vast majority of people, really discount this. And it's a part of the old programming. It's been discounted because the deep state or the evil version of humanity that wants to own us, wants to govern us, wants to imprison us, wants to use us for their supply of whatever it is they want. Well, they don't want us to know what our intuition really is. They'll say, oh, it's a gut feeling, doesn't matter. It's just a gut feeling. Gut feeling is, a very basic, fundamental idea of what intuition is, which is not real. It is so far beyond that. When you actually understand that this inner guidance is your true highest self talking to you, it's your God self talking to you with truth, it's very powerful. This is where the answers are. You've heard me a lot in my teaching say, instead of looking externally all the time for everybody's opinion, and all it is opinion, everybody's opinion, that doesn't mean you don't respect it. It also means you don't have to adopt it. Of course, if something resonates with you very powerfully, then, you're probably getting that resonation, that feeling, that vibrational energy is saying, well, this is real and true to you. And so, but going within is where the answers are, and you have to be still to do that. This is where your direction comes from. This is where the truth lies. And so everything is within. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you don't look outside and you don't learn and you don't try and understand what's going on out there. Of course you do. I'm constantly reading books, and a book is the author's opinion on a subject. And so I'll read the book. And if there's parts of the book that really resonate with me, I adopt that and move forward. If there's parts that don't, I just move past it. Not everything resonates. Some things do. And so I'm scanning all the time and looking, for other people's opinion for what resonates. But I spend most of the time going within and listening to the whispers of my true higher self coming from my intuition. And remember, intuition speaks in the language of emotions. And so the person who becomes, a highly intuitive person is the person who's capable of decoding the emotional language of the non-conscious mind, your intuition. So you need to be a good decoder, and that takes practice. So listen to and trust your inner whispers and act on them. Sovereignty is your birthright, your natural way of being. And so we want to shift out of the unnatural. The unnatural is the straw man, the capital letters, the corporation. Well, we choose not to be owned by anybody anymore. We choose to be in a state of sovereignty, our true, higher, natural way of being. So let's go back and finish today with this definition, the QCLI perspective. Personal sovereignty is the commitment to exercise absolute, undivided, and permanent freedom from all unwanted limitations, for your higher self-realization. Think about those words, they're very important. And if they resonate, beautiful. If they don't, we'll keep going on your journey of discovery of what personal sovereignty is all about. And I really do encourage you to look, study, review, and find what resonates with you, what's meaningful to you, and then go on that journey, because the journey of personal sovereignty is incumbent. It is crucial. It is a significant step to tapping into and accessing your true higher potential and realizing it as your reality. I really hope that's something for you to think about and to pursue further.